how they filmed that commercial. They, of course, were in a barber shop, and he said they had 3 ducks there. They had a trainer. The trainer had a whistle. He'd blow his whistle. The ducks would stop on command. And then he talked about the lunch breaks and everything. And just as serious as he could, he looked over at me. He said, you know, he said, those ducks don't really talk.
Yogi Bear.
80 Over was the first book he wrote that was a bestseller. There's a whole chapter in there about me. The first part of it's true. He talks about the fact that I played an extra year, and Dale Webb, the owner of the Yankees, just gave me a blank contract and said, just fill it in. And I said, well, I'll just fill it in for the same thing I made last year, because I didn't have too good a year last year. And he just couldn't understand, Yogi said, that money was not involved in my decision to step out of baseball. But then the second part, Yogi talks about me coming over and spending the weekend in his home. My wife I just had a young boy, and so she stayed at home in South Carolina. She was coming up during the summer, and Yogi said, no use to pay the Grand, what was the name of that hotel right there by the Yankee Stadium, on the Grand Concourse. He said, no use to pay that. He said, come on over and spend the weekend with me. And I said, how many bedrooms you got? He said, well, I don't know. My wife takes care of that. I had enough room. I went over. And while I was there, he took me up to the attic, and he showed me all the things he had picked up in pre- and post-game television shows. He had rifles, shotguns, golf clubs. He had a pair of hunting boots, and I knew he didn't hunt. They were my size. And I said, can I buy those hunting boots? He said, oh, no, I don't sell anything. In the book, it said I went up and saw everything he had and bought everything up there. And when he was inducted in the Hall of Fame, I sold it and made a fortune. And I said, Yogi, why did you say that? He said, does it say that? I haven't read that book yet. Talking to the guy that wrote it, he said it sounded good. They did a big bust of Mickey Mantle out in Oklahoma City. Being from there, they think the world of him out there. All the Yankees went out for the occasion. Yogi was there. He'd just written another book, things that I'd said that I didn't say or something like that. And he said, be sure to watch Larry King live. Next Saturday, I'm on there, and I really do a good job. And I said, well, if it's live, how do you know you did a good job? He said, oh, we taped it about 2 weeks ago. He's a piece of work. But he's in perfect shape. He's 80 years old. And if you try to get him up here, he'll say, Dan, I'll come, but you got to pay me $40,000. He's really, his boys now are the ones that take care of his agents. Yes.
Yeah, Bobby, does your hand still hurt from McCovey's line drive?
McCovey hit that ball real hard. Mantle used to hit balls that had overspin on it. Looked like a base hit when it took off. Here's what I remember about that. 2 outs. Willie Mays on second, a little on third base. We were 1 run ahead. And first base was open. And so Ralph Houck went out to talk to Ralph Terry, who, by the way, was a pitcher against Mazeroski. And while he did that, I went over to second base. Mays was standing on the bag, and I started talking with Kubek. And Kubek looked at me and said, I sure hope McCovey doesn't hit the ball to you. And I said, why? He said, because you've already made 2 errors, and I'd hate to see you blow one right now. So that's what I was thinking about when I walked back to my position. And right before the pitch, the umpire at second base, National League umpire, said, hey, Rich, can I have your cap for my little cousin? Well, I remember going down, and about that time, if you remember, he had a foul ball 9 miles out of the park. And when he did, I moved over a little bit. And the next pitch, he hit the ball hard, but it was just a step or 2 to my left, and I caught it and made it out, and the World Series was over. And McCovey was inducted in the Hall of Fame, and he said Richardson was playing out of position. He said, I thought I was playing just right. You know? But he's a good guy. I was. Thank you.
The toughest pitcher you ever faced and why?
One stands out, and the reason for that is because the 63 World Series, Sandy Koufax was pitching. And Tony Kubek was leading off. He struck out. I was batting second. I struck out. Mantle struck out. Next time up, same thing. Kubek struck out. I struck out. Third time up, I just wanted to be a first ball hitter. I didn't want to strike out. Well, Tony struck out, and I struck out. And when I was walking by Mantle in the old next circle, he shook his hand. He says, no, you need to go up there. I got in with him, too. I walked the 4th time up. I want you to know that. But I got 2 hits off of him the next time when we went out to Los Angeles in the 4th game of the World Series. But he was the toughest. Yes?
What do you feel about George Steinbrenner getting the new Yankee Stadium?
Well, it's a lot of money, and he said he's willing to pay for it. I think there's some good ideas. We got a little bulletin the other day of what is going to take place there. I think it's an exciting place. I was, if you'll remember, they played over at Shea for 2 years while they were getting the current station renovated. I had the prayer. noted for that for some reason. Marty Appel, some of you might remember that name. Marty Appel was president of my fan club, and I got him a job at Yankee Stadium when he was about 15 years old. And he worked his way up to vice president of the Yankees in charge of public relations. Couldn't work for Steinbrenner, so he went to the commissioner's office, worked for him. Then he went to PIX and televised all the Yankee games. And then when they had the Olympics in Atlanta, they picked him out of the computer and brought him down there to head up public relations for the Olympics. Then he came back to New York and headed up Topps Bubbling. But Marty Appel is probably one of my closest friends now, yes. And he couldn't work for Steinbrenner. I think he'd be very difficult to work for, but I think he does a lot of things we don't know about. He gives a lot of money to really good places, good organizations, and he certainly has given life to a lot of colleges. And so I'm appreciative of him in that way. All the way in the back, yes. Oh, blue shirt, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Did you ever have the pleasure of warming up with Mickey and catching his knuckleball? Because I heard it was one of the greatest ones ever in baseball.
What he's talking about, Mickey Mantle had the best knuckleball in all of baseball, better than Necro, any of those guys. And when a rookie would join the club, the test would be to go out and catch 3 of Mickey's knuckleballs. Jake Gibbs, who I thought had the best hands in baseball, went out. The first one broke his nose. Sent him back down to Richmond. I was smart enough not to field one in front. I fielded it on the side. I missed it, but it didn't hit me. So I was smart enough to do that. He had a great knuckleball.
I think George's new project is an opportunity for it to become Yankee Stadium and the house of George Bush.
I think he would like for it to be that, yes. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I ended up as not only the athletic director and baseball coach, but assistant to the chancellor at Liberty University. And then I retired in '90, came back home. I have 15 grandchildren now. That's pretty much full-time. And so we spend 4 months a year at Litchfield Beach now. And I'm just kind of looking out. My kids are scattered all over. I've got a granddaughter that's in Spain studying. I've got one that's in London. My grandson, my oldest grandson, just graduated from the University of Southern California, and he's working out there. But I guess what I'm thinking about now is the legacy of those players that I was privileged to play with, and we've mentioned a few of them tonight. Mickey Mantle just absolutely stands out. And the thing I remember most about Mickey Mantle is that probably he had a great heart. He would do anything in the world for you. But if you remember, at 51 years of age, Roger Maris had a battle with cancer. And I was asked by his wife to come out and have the eulogy at Roger's funeral. It was really cold in Fargo, North Dakota. Mickey was a pallbearer, been drinking a little bit. And he came up to me after the service and he said, "Hey, I want you to have my funeral." Well, I never thought it happened because that was a long time ago, and I just thought nothing could ever come up. But every time I saw him after that, he said, "Don't forget now, you to have my funeral." I remember one time we were in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Tony Kubek and I were decided to go to church. I had a friend that was a pastor of a church right close to the stadium, and we had a double header that day, but I had permission from Ralph, and we went to church, had a cab waiting for us to come back in time for batting practice for the double header. And Mickey went with us that day. And I remember the word got around Mickey Mantle was in here, and they were sort of buzzing in the congregation, and I said, "We're going to have to leave about 5 minutes early to meet the crowd." We got up to 5 minutes early to go outside, and half the congregation got up and moved the patch. He came out. He wanted his picture with his son, with Mickey. We laughed about that. But we had some great times, and we had wonderful fellowship on the Yankee Ball Club. I remember one time we were in Phoenix, Arizona. We had a reunion of the Yankees. And it was an unusual reunion in that it was the Make-A-Wish Foundation had us come out. And one of our players, Johnny James, had this big ball out there. And they lined up to get Mantle's autograph. All the money was going to Make-A-Wish Foundation. But we had a private club, and Steve Stone and somebody else owned, and we took it over for that night. And Mickey got the microphone. He'd been drinking a little bit. He got up. My wife was there, and he looked over at my wife. He said, "Betsy, I want you to know I love you. And I know you don't appreciate everything that's going on." He said, "When I was growing up in Oklahoma, he said, I attended church every Sunday. He said, I didn't drink. He said, I know there are a lot of things going on here that you don't maybe go for." He was living with his agent at the time and some other things. But he said, "I want you to know I love you and care for you." And then he wanted to say, "See that big guy out there?" One of my teammates threw his chest out. "He's the one that taught me how to party." And he thought that was a good thing at that time. But then after Roger went on to be with the Lord, Mickey and I were together several times. I remember we'd go to Atlanta to play an old timers game and have a golf tournament. My 2 boys were always with me. And Mickey would come up and say, "Okay, you boys, come on with me now. I want you to stay. You can see your dad anytime. Come on, I want you to stay with me." And then some of you saw that poignant interview on national television with Bob Costas. Mickey said, I've been through Betty Ford, I don't drink anymore, but I still have a boy in my heart. And it was about that time that I was on the board of Baseball Chapel, baseball and sisters team, BAT. And Mickey was on the board, but his health was not allowing him to attend the meetings. But we're meeting in Dallas around the All-Star game. And about 5 o'clock in the morning, my telephone rang in the hotel we were staying in. My wife answered the phone. It was Mickey, and he said, Betsy, I'm really hurting. I'm in the midst of chemotherapy after the liver transplant. I want Bobby to pray for me. We had prayer together on the phone, and I remember sharing this verse with Mickey that day. I said, Mickey, there's a great verse in Philippians 4, and the Phillips translation says, delight yourself in the Lord. Find your joy in Him at all times. Never forget His nearness. And then it says, tell God in detail your problems, your anxieties. And the promise is the peace of Him, which passeth all understanding, shall keep our hearts and minds as we rest in Christ Jesus. And he reminded me once again, my wife went out and spent the next 2 days with his wife. Mickey and I talked several other times. But as I left to go back to the Carolinas, he said, don't forget me. You're to have my funeral. 2 weeks later, the call came. He'd taken a turn for the worse. And the family wanted Betsy and I to come out and to be with him and to make the arrangements. We immediately were on a plane flying back toward Dallas. We went into Baylor Medical Center, and I remember that Mickey had a smile on his face. There were 2 policemen on the door. At that time, everybody was trying to get in for a photo op or whatever reason to visit him. And so only 7 people were allowed in there. His 3 boys, his wife, his lawyer, and my wife Betsy. And we spent those next 4 days there with Mickey and had some great times of fellowship. We really did. Mickey had been listening to a tape while we were there of Pete Maravich. Some of you know that name from basketball. Lifestyle just like Mickey's, and yet he had a wonderful peace and a very humble testimony. And Mickey confided to me that day that he had that same peace. Told the doctors he was ready. And then, of course, some of you know he went on to be with the Lord. And some 3 days after that, I had the humbling experience of having his service on national television. And some of you probably were aware, maybe even saw that on that occasion. Mickey had a day in New York, and I bet some of you were down there. They retired his number, a monument in center field. And I remember that Mickey had heard me use these words. And he said, I want to use them on my day. Too much going on. Didn't have time. But on national television and his service, I thought they were appropriate. It said, your name may not appear down here in this world's Hall of Fame. In fact, you may be so unknown that no one knows your name. The trophies, the honors, the flashbulbs you may pass you by, and neon lights of blue. But if you love and serve the Lord, then I have news for you. This Hall of Fame is only good as long as time shall be. But keep in mind, God's Hall of Fame is for eternity. This crowd on earth, they soon forget the heroes of the past. They cheer like mad until you fall, and that's how long you last. But in God's Hall of Fame, but just believing in His Son inscribed, you'll find your name. I tell you, friend, I wouldn't trade my name, however small, that's written there beyond the stars in that celestial hall. For every famous name on earth, I'll glory that they share. I'd rather be an unknown here, have my name right there. And I guess that really does say it all. Now, I'd just like to know if you got maybe 3 or more questions, 4 more questions, and then we'll close it out. Dan promised me that I would be out here way before 9, and it's about 1:45 now. 2 boys in there. It's a 2-seater, of course. So I took it down to the Pontiac dealer and traded for a Jeep. I like to hunt. I could get my boys in the Jeep. The Yankees sort of got mad because the next year I drive that Jeep up to Yankee Stadium and park it by some of those good cars that the other guys were driving. But it was a good move for me. There's another story to that, though, that I probably shouldn't even tell. Johnny Sain was pitching coach on the Yankees. He had a Chevrolet dealership in Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. And I felt so bad, and some of my friends said, you shouldn't have done that. I went back and bought that Corvette back. It had 9,000 miles on it. And I bought it back again. And my wife didn't want any part of it for some reason. I think she was upset because I got rid of it the first time. And so I traded it to Johnny Sain for a Chevy 2 station wagon. That's terrible. I hate to even think that. So I have no idea where it is now. One bad decision on my part. I've got a friend at home's got one just like it. He turned out $85,000 for it. One more? No more. One more. Yes.
Not to bring up 1960 World Series again, but you know what led Casey to decide not to pitch Woody Ford in the first game?
That's why he was a Met the next year. You know that? Oh, I tell you what. When you've got the chairman of the board and you don't start him, he pitched his 2 shutouts in that series. And Art Ditmar is my buddy, you know, he's retired and lives down at Myrtle Beach where I'm staying now. But Whitey Ford has to be the starting pitcher. And maybe there's more to it that I don't know about. But I just say we have to start. Two more questions. Yes?
You know Pete Rose, and do you think he should be in the Hall of Fame?
Pete Rose, it's really funny. I know him very well. I was with him the other day in Kansas City. He said, "Tell me something. Did the Yankees ever talk about me?" I said, "Well, yeah, they did." I said, "Whitey Ford and Mickey Mantle used to talk about how fast you got down to first base." He said, "Well, I wasn't that fast. Mantle could outrun me." I said, "They were talking about on a base on balls." His credentials were really good. But he made a mistake, and he knows all he'd have to do. I mean, he's had 15 times when all he had to do was say, "Hey, you know, I want people across the country to know that I made a mistake. And I want young people to know that you can't." The next day, they tap him on the wrist, he'd be in the Hall of Fame. But his pride just won't let him do that. But I think someday he will do that. He'll be in the Hall of Fame. Yes.
The 61 home run race between Mickey and Roger, can you just talk about the competition between the two, their relationship, who the rest of the team is pulling for?
Well, that's the rest of the team, the whole team was pulling for Mickey. Because he grew up in the farm system and he was their own, Roger had been traded in. And everybody wanted Mickey to win. And yet Mickey was probably the one that was pulling for Roger as much as anybody. He would be the one person that he probably just soon see Roger winning. I know probably my biggest thrill in baseball was in 1962, the next year, when he was voted most valuable player in the American League, and he made the statement Bobby should have won it. Well, that was my big thrill, and that's the way he was. But the players all wanted Mantle to win. Now, when he had to bow out because of the injury, because of the infection in his leg, then their allegiance shifted right over to Maris. They wanted to see him break it at that time. Yes, sir.
Always been a big Tigers fan. They had a great team in 61 also.
They did.
Partially for the Yankees. What do you think of their
Well, Frank Larry was sure good. I remember that name very well. He was the Yankee killer. You know, it's something about those pinstripes and the fact that you win year after year. We would also pick up that one veteran ball player each year that would help us win the pennant. They traded some younger Jerry Lumpies or Norm Sieberts. You'd pick up Anita Slaughter or Johnny Mize, whoever it might be. And that certainly made a difference in winning some of those pennants. But I remember the only year we lost in '59, we lost 5 games in a row in Boston. And I thought, you know, we're not going to win this year. I couldn't understand it, you know, because I was just, the winning attitude was there. One more question, then we'll close it out. All right, right over here. Yes. Two more.
Bobby, could you speak to the rivalry between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees?
Well, let me just put it this way. My first year with the Yankees, I made $5,000. That was the minimum salary on the Yankees. The end of the season last year, when the Yankees ended up with Boston, a group of 8 businessmen paid me $5,000 to come up and have breakfast with them. And it must have been a big rivalry for 3 of them were Red Sox fans, and the other 5 were Yankee fans. And it's a great rivalry. I don't remember during the time we played because they weren't that much of a threat. They were known as the Country Club ball club during that year. Mr. Yawkey was a great manager. They had wonderful hitters, but they just didn't seem to be in contention. The White Sox or Detroit or some of those other teams were in contention. And so that rivalry really came about after I left. I did hear Johnny Pesky was my coach, and I heard him talking about he held the ball a little too long and Slaughter was running from 46, but that was before my time. I didn't remember much about it. All right, this is the last question. I don't know, yes.
How do you compare your era game of ball players to today?
It's hard to do that because of, for instance, when I went to New York this year, in fact, last year was my last year, an old-timer game. I played my first old-timer game, I was still 31 years old. And for the next 40 years, I've been to just about, I'd say 35, 38 of them. And 2 years ago, it was the 100th anniversary, and they wanted me to play. I was the oldest guy playing, but they insisted I play. They wanted me to lead off. And they said, who do you want to bat against? I said, who are my choices? They said, Stan Bonson or Jim Mountain. I said, well, Bonson, of course. And Bonson said, I'll throw it right in there for you. He threw the ball right in there. I did a line drive, went out beyond left field, rolled around, and I could just see going to third base standing up. And I got to first base, and Cliff Johnson was there. Nick Blank, first baseman, he reached out and grabbed me and said, "You stay right here." I still had time. It was still around. I started, he said, "No, no." He grabbed me again and said, "You stay right here." And they put a runner in for me. So I figured I'm retired, so I'm not going back to the old timers game. But it's a difficult time now. When you go to old timers games, the one ingredient missing is team loyalty. You don't see that anymore because of the finance involved in it. And I think that's the main ingredient that's missing. Certainly the players are good. Your Derek Jeter's and your A-Rods, those guys are wonderful ball players with a tremendous amount of ability. I just, my allegiance has shifted down from the college level and now to Little League. I've had grandchildren playing down there, and so I watch more of that now. Let me just say, I've enjoyed being with you. Anybody that I missed on autograph, I'll be glad to pick you up now.